Hey everybody, this is Kira Davis from Just Listen to Yourself right here on the FCB Radio Network, and I've got a great problem. I need a new theme song for the show. So I am asking listeners to send in their submissions for new theme songs for Just Listen to Yourself. If you are a musician or a songwriter or just somebody who wants to try their hand at it, go ahead and send us a song that you think could be used for the theme of Just Listen to Yourself. You could have the chance to win $150, but better than that, your song could get an official release on the Orchard and Sony Records. That's right. The Orchard and Sony Records will release your song as an official single, and it'll get played all across the FCB Radio Network to start and maybe beyond. Send your entry to JLTY at protonmail.com. Contest closes May 31st.
This is the FCB Radio Network, home of the best personalities and where real talk lives. Online at fcbradio.com. FCB.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. This, of course, is the podcast where I take talking points on hot button issues and I draw those talking points all the way out to their logical conclusion. This is an exercise in critical thinking, an exercise in persuasion, and sometimes it feels like an exercise in futility, depending on what day of the week you catch me. I have listener responses today. It's your turn to talk. You guys have been writing me. I've been collecting some of the gems, and I think it's time to go for it. This week, and this is a great week to do it because you're going to get some good, meaty stuff from our mini-sodes that are coming up with my friend and host of the Just Thinking podcast, Daryl B. Harrison. Y'all love him. Y'all are always recommending him to me. And I finally got him to come and talk to me. And I hate that he's on the mini-sode side because our conversation, we talked for 90 minutes. I mean, it was supposed to be 25 to 40 minutes. And we just had so much to talk about it. We're going to loop back around again. I'm going to have him back on. I'm hoping to have his podcasting partner, Virgil, on at some point as well. So you'll get more of Daryl in the future. And what I'm going to do is I'm just cutting his piece into 2 mini episodes. But the entire interview will be over on Davis Nation. And it was a Zoom interview. So you can see Daryl and myself talking back and forth. You get almost the whole 90 minutes. I think I forgot to hit record right in the beginning, but we were just doing a lot of niceties. But yeah, you can watch the whole thing there. So just go over to davisnation.locals.com and sign up for our community and enjoy not just Daryl, but all of the other stuff that we have going on over there. The question of the day over at Davis Nation today is, if you had one wish that you could use for Congress, just one wish, and it has to be used in Congress, doesn't expand to any other area of your life, what policy or amendment or other legislative thing would you have them either repeal or add that you think could fundamentally change the direction of the United States? Big question. Interesting answers. A lot of people had a lot of interesting answers. I'm not going to go into it. The discussion is still going on even as I record, but you don't have to miss out on it. You can join us in our community over there, which is growing every day, which is a place where we can speak freely and speak safely without judging each other. Some of the things I say in there, I know everybody doesn't agree with, but everybody listens. Everybody listens to each other, and we definitely need more listening, especially of this show. All right, let's get to some listener submissions. I've got a letter here from a listener named Robert. And Robert says, I've been following your podcast since you appeared on Dan Bongino's podcast. Thank you, Robert. Dan Bongino, by the way, congratulations to Dan Bongino. He not only took Rush Limbaugh's slot in several markets across the country, which is that's a big deal in radio. Whatever you think of Rush Limbaugh, that guy is the godfather of talk radio. So I'm not even doing, probably podcasting you could say, in a way, because that is an extension of talk radio. So I probably wouldn't even be here without a guy like that. So it's a big deal, no matter what you think about the politics of the issue. So congratulations to Dan on that. But then today, it turns out Fox has added him to their weekend anchor lineup. So everything's coming up roses for Dan. Congratulations, Dan. And it was my pleasure to be on that one episode. I get a lot of responses still from that one episode. And we had a really amazing conversation. You can go find it on Dan Bongino's site. So Robert is one of the people that came over from hearing me on Dan Bongino's show. And he said, I've been really impressed with your takes. You bring up a lot of notions I've never thought about in the way that you put them. I find your takes refreshing and eye-opening. I very much appreciate you and your podcasts. I download them from iTunes and listen on my old 4th generation iPod. I just wanted to send you a note to let you know that this old white man listens and is not too old to learn, even though I just turned 69. I'm a retired Army platoon sergeant, retired after serving 22 years. Best wishes and keep it up. Sincerely, Robert. Robert, thank you so much. And thank you for your service. And what an honor. I wouldn't presume to be more intelligent than a man of your age and your experience, Robert. So for you to say, hey, you actually made me think, that is a high compliment. And actually, it's why I do what I do. So I am happy and grateful that, you feel like you're learning, and we should never stop learning. We should be open. And that is kind of what I've been aiming to do, even through the summer with all the Black Lives Matter stuff and the civil rights stuff and the Confederate statues. Doesn't that seem like 4 lifetimes ago by now? I mean, as I talk to you this moment, there are gas shortages and gas lines in Florida and across the southeastern United States. So that seems like almost quaint that we were worrying about that. But one of the things that I wanted to present to people, particularly on the conservative side, because the battle was obviously, and I think inextricably, partisan. Like, I just don't think there was another way for it not to be partisan. But I wanted to give people a reason to maybe think outside the box and think about, okay, how can I see it from this side? Because change is coming anyway. And so what kind of change do I want it to be? Do I just want it to be the kind of change where I throw my hands up and go, I'm not involved in this. If it's my way or the highway, because I'm right. And you guys are right. You guys are almost always right, by the way. But to throw up your hands and say that, I think that there is a way that we can be a part of positive change around us that doesn't necessarily involve us acquiescing to our ideological opponents, wherever you are on that scale. That's what I was hoping to open up to us over this past summer. And I've gotten so many letters from people like Robert who have said, yeah, I haven't thought about it like that before. You don't have to change your whole political ideology or your vote, just the idea that there's more than one way to look at something is enough. It's enough. If we could get all of our brothers and sisters in this country to take that attitude, right? Just be open enough to consider that there's another way to look at this. Well, we'd be winning. We'd all be winning. We'd be far less tense than we are today, right? Yeah, and I've said this repeatedly. That is really the concept of we just need to learn to tolerate each other. We don't necessarily need to find unity. That is perfectly acceptable. Thank you so much, Robert. Keep listening and keep clicking on this podcast on your 4th generation iPod. You know what? I think I have my 1st generation iPod. Can you believe it? Most of you probably can. A lot of you probably can. Because if you're like me, you never throw away any electronics. My family is just weird. I have, someday I'm going to do it. I have a ton of old laptops, desktops. I mean, the drawer of wires, right? We all have that. Kindles and iPads and iPods. And I know that some of these things can actually be recycled for cash. There are some organizations out there that will let you send them your old electronics, but there's stuff on them that I want to sift through and see what's there, and who has time for that? So they stay where all electronics stay, in the junk cupboard. And maybe someday I'll get to it, but good for you, Robert, for giving your fourth generation some love. All right, let's go on to Kelsey. Kelsey, who is one of our beloved community members over at davisnation.locals.com. And actually, she's now a published writer. She wrote something over there that I thought was so good and so poignant, and something that people needed to hear, that I published it at my day job over at redstate.com. And it's about what California candidates need to do to turn the state around. Kelsey, this was worthy of publishing. So thank you for that. But she wrote this piece too, and I wanted to read this to you. It's not a piece, it's a email to me. But I wanted to read it to you. It's about that Meghan Markle episode. I don't know if you remember that one, but it was Meghan Markle and the nobility of race. And I was kind of using your name as a hook for you. It wasn't about Meghan Markle. Meghan Markle. It was about how we're doing this weird thing where we are attributing nobility to how people look. And I hate it when you do that. I think even when you watch the movies and it's like, the poor person is automatically noble and the rich person is automatically evil, as if there is some inherent nobility about being poor, or inherent, just like there's no inherent nobility about being rich, right? Why do we think it's that way for poor? And it's the same way with black people. It's almost like Meghan Markle was universally despised until the moment she came out and said, oh, racism. And then suddenly everyone remembered she was black. And then suddenly her remarks were taken with all seriousness and not questioned at all because, oh, well, she's black and a black person would not lie about this. Race is not inherently noble. Kelsey says, your latest JLTY, and I know it's a while ago now because I haven't done a listener response in a minute. Your latest JLTY, Meghan Markle, I'm just going to keep doing it, and the nobility of race was excellent and not at all what I expected going in. I thought there'd be more about Meghan, but I'm glad she was your case study for a broader point. Although if you ever want to do a bonus episode on the royals, I am all ears. Girl, new podcast? Oh, no. I got so much going on, but that would be fun. What I especially liked was your last segment where you talk about how dangerous this kind of thinking, where race inherently makes one good or bad, can be so dangerous for women, leading them to wrongly ignore their intuition and when in potentially dangerous situations. I've had my own experiences with that, and I wanted to share where that intuition saved me from trouble. I'm a petite blonde and I attract a lot of weirdos. I'm certainly not the type to walk around with a welcoming smile or immodest clothing, but that doesn't seem to help me any. She says, I think the blonde hair is a beacon for weirdo. That's my best guess. Yes. By the way, I think there's some research for that. There's some research for how the human mind perceives blonde hair. I got to go dig that up. It's very interesting. We're hardwired for it for some reason. But it wasn't interesting enough for me to remember. But I know that I wanted to remember. I wanted to remember why it was interesting, and that's enough for me to go back and find it. All right. When I was in college, I had a summer job as an administrative assistant working for the executives of a largest company in downtown Seattle. I loved the job and it came with great perks. One of those was that I would order and pick up lunches for all the senior executives every day. So long as I did that and worked through lunch, they'd cover my lunches as well. We're talking salmon, sushi, pad thai, chowder, you name it. So I was more than happy to do that. Yeah, that sounds awesome. However, our building was only a couple blocks away from some very sketchy stretches of downtown, and occasionally I'd have to walk through those areas to get to lunch. I'd keep my head down and make eye contact with no one, although I would be constantly aware of my surroundings. This was an area of high homelessness and a lot of drug addicts and, quote, recovery centers. Though, in brackets, in parentheses, she says, though, I think they were just convenient places to shoot up because folks coming in and out certainly weren't recovering from anything. Yeah, recovery centers are. I'm going to do another episode on California homelessness because I'm still seeing too many ignorant people out there who think this because we don't have enough houses. A 20-year-old female had to keep her wits about her in this area. One day I was asked to pick up sushi from one of my favorite spots a few blocks away. I could not have been more excited for this lunch. As I'm walking to my route there, avoiding a couple of known trouble spots, two very tall black men dressed in all black get off the bus a block from me. That in and of itself isn't cause for alarm. Happens all the time. But they just stare at me and I know something's up. Then one of them crouches down. He's uphill from my position and points at me. There's no one else on my side of the street. Alarm bells go off in my head. That's not a normal thing. I need to get out of there. So I cross to the middle of the street and they follow me. I'm now outside a, quote, recovery coffee shop, and these two men have beelined across the street and are now screaming in my face all kinds of obscenities. You white B, F you, that kind of thing. One tried to grab my purse and there was something about giving them money mixed in with cussing and racial slurs. I was utterly terrified. No one else was going to step in, and I needed to just get somewhere safe. The sushi place was half a block away, and I ran for it. They followed me. I ducked inside, and they stopped their pursuit, pacing outside, waiting for me to come out. They looked irate and possibly on something. I immediately called my boss and told her what happened and that lunch was going to be delayed. The hostess at the restaurant kept an eye out front while I calmed down. Eventually they left, and I waited a bit longer before bolting out of there with the food, taking a different route back. When I got back to the office, I told my boss if she ever wants me to get lunch from there, I'm driving and the company can pay me for my parking. In the building's garage. It wasn't safe for me to walk around there, and I'd never go through that experience again. She agreed to my terms. I share all that because it's one of those instances where if I hadn't listened to my gut, my women's intuition, who knows what would have happened. If I had had this noble savage mentality and tamped down my instinct because I didn't want to be perceived as racist, I would have been robbed or worse. It's downtown Seattle. Half of the people on the street in that area are on some kind of substance. They don't care if there's people around or broad daylight, and no one is coming to help you. It was true over 10 years ago, and even more so today. What you said is exactly spot on. There's no inherent nobility in someone's skin color, and there's no inherent evil in skin color. I suppose skin color matters in the sense that it can indicate ancestry or possible certain cultural interests, but it cannot tell you the measure of a man or his intentions. And to just ignore your gut because it contradicts some racial narrative is crazy town. I don't automatically trust and let my guard down around white men because they're also white. That would be utterly insane. She says, I have another story about a tweaker following me into a wine bar and proceeding to have a fake phone call to impress me. I attract weirdos. Okay, I'm going to try to remember to ask you about this, Kelsey, because we're doing, over at Davis Nation, I'm doing a Meet the Community series. So basically, I'm interviewing you guys. You guys are the subject of curiosity. So I'm starting with one of my community members who has a YouTube channel herself, Rachel Odell. But Kelsey's on the list. So it sounds to me like our session, Kelsey, is going to be a lot of me hearing your weirdo tales because I need to hear some of this stuff. And then she just says, thanks for the JLTY. Well, thank you for sharing that story. Absolutely. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's Meghan Markle and the inherent nobility of race. And it breaks down how we're in this weird place where we are making race unassailable for anyone who's not white. But the sidebar that I kind of went into is that by doing this, we are encouraging young women to tamp down their instincts based on what people look like. And so there are a lot of young women out there who are actually getting hurt because when they should be running or crossing the street, their social justice instinct kicks in and they say, well, I'm going to look like a racist if I do that. Or if I tell someone that this Hispanic man is scaring me or this man who looks black is scaring me, that I'm not going to be believed. I'm going to be perceived as a racist. And so she'll leave herself in dangerous situations longer than she should. I think we are doing this to women. And I think it's a problem. And Kelsey's example here is a great illustration. I also used one in that episode as well about a woman who was stalked by an African student at her school and how she was not believed because everybody's, oh, this is a white girl thing. And even for a second, she thought maybe it is a white girl thing. And it wasn't until that man actually got almost violent with somebody else that people actually believed her. So thank you, Kelsey.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
Savannah writes me. She's 25 years old and originally from Riverside, California, and she's in her first year of medical school in Virginia. Congratulations, Savannah. She says, I've listened to almost every episode of JLTY, but I haven't written because every time I listened, I forgot to write down your response email address. I hear you. I just wanted to reach out and say thanks for hosting this podcast. It helps me think more critically about what I say and what I believe. I was already conservative, but your perspective opens my eyes to things I don't know about other cultures, and it helps me better articulate those ideas to others. I always look forward to the things you have to say, and I don't mind when you ramble. Keep up the good work. Very respectfully, Savannah. Thank you, Savannah. I did get a message or a note from somebody. Oh, no, it was a review. I was going through my iTunes reviews. By the way, if you haven't left a review, could you do me a favor? I'm shooting for 1,000 5-star reviews. So right now I'm at like 592, so I've got a ways to go. But if you haven't written one, please head over to iTunes and drop one for me with a 5-star rating. That would be amazing. But yeah, I had one of those reviews was like, I really like what Kira has to say, but it takes her a long time to get to the point sometimes. I was like, oh, you ain't never lied. Yes, I know, I get it, but 12 years I've been in this business, and there's one thing that I know, one thing that I've learned, that if you can't be true to who you are, people will find you out. If you are inauthentic, people will find you out. And one of the things I like to do is take the long way around a story, a long way around a point. I love using analogy and stories to illustrate points, and I have a brain that goes off on different tangents, and sometimes I like to explore those tangents because I feel like other people are like that too. Right? Like, if I want just solid, factual, just information, I'm going to go listen to like a Malcolm Gladwell podcast or what's Dan Carlin's history podcast there that I have not queued up in quite a while because it's chunky. Like, if I want straight up to the point information, I go there. But for me, I think part of the charm of the show for people is that I sound like them. I sound like they imagine they sound in their own brains. I'm saying the things that people are saying, and I'm admitting that, yes, the path to clear thought is a straight line. I think that's what people find relatable. So, and this man, he wasn't being rude. I think he was just making a comment. And he left me a 5-star review. So, no complaints. But I giggled when I read it. I was like, yeah, he's right. So thank you, Savannah. Oh, here's a great one. I've been waiting to read this one from Casey. Casey wanted to comment on the Ravi Zacharias episode because really on that episode I was talking about the concept of tolerance and how we need to stop striving for unity and maybe just find tolerance. She says, I'm a big fan of your show. In your podcast, episode 68 about Ravi Zacharias, which I appreciated, by the way, you started talking about tolerance near the end. You discussed abortion and that as people against this evil, we don't have to have unity, but we do need to be tolerant. You said that you don't like the pro-abortion point of view, you don't agree with it and you think it's abhorrent. You said that you can tolerate its existence because we live in a free society and people have the right to believe this, and in fact it's legal. Well, so was racism at one point and not too long ago. Martin Luther King Jr. and other civil rights leaders were intolerant. So I'm glad they were, because laws were changed as a result. Your show is about following thoughts to their logical conclusions. That's what I did here. I can't tolerate abortion because it is evil, period. I know this was not what your show was about, but I had to write you about this. I love your show, and I wish more people would follow their beliefs to their logical conclusions. Your sister in Christ, Casey. Thank you for that, Casey. I'm really glad you actually gave me the chance to clarify this, because you weren't the only person that made this comment. And when I went back and listened to it, I realized, oh, the way it sounded, I may have been sounding like I was saying I can tolerate abortion. I wasn't saying that. What I was saying is that I can tolerate the existence of opinions about abortion, that don't reflect mine, which I think mine are right, and by tolerate, that doesn't mean that that not push back. I mean, tolerance is only the acceptance of the existence of things you don't like. Right. And tolerance doesn't apply to things you do like. Tolerance applies to things you don't like. So tolerance is simply the acceptance of the existence of it, not the acceptance of the premise. I'm certainly not accepting the premise of abortion. I will fight it. I think what muddied my point was that I said, well, it's legal. What I meant when I said, oh, well, it's legal, is that because it is a law, it's actually not surprising that there are many people in this country who find it to be acceptable. So you're going to have a lot of opinion. It's not something that's illegal and it's like, oh, these people are just nut jobs for believing this. No, it's the law. And a lot of people think that because it's the law, that their opinion on it is actually a valid and good one because it's actually backed up by the law. So that makes it worthy of tolerance. Not saying that I would ever tolerate abortion. I don't. I have no tolerance for the act of murder, but I do have tolerance for the fact that in this country there are people who believe that it's okay and that there are people who don't believe it's okay. And I'm never going to unify with the people who think it's okay, but I can tolerate that they're there. I can tolerate that they exist. My goal is not to eliminate those people, to go and murder them all or round them up and put them in concentration camps or take away their radios and their internet so that they can't speak. That's not my goal, which is unfortunately a goal I believe my ideological opponents have for people like me, like us, Casey. So what I was saying was not that you should be tolerant of partial birth abortion, but rather just saying that I can tolerate people with the view of abortion. I can tolerate their very existence. Right? They have the right to exist. They're children of God, even though they believe this thing that I think is wrong. They have the right to exist, and I can tolerate them taking up the same space in society as I do. That's what tolerance is. So it was just an illustration to tell you the difference between unity and tolerance. So I apologize for that perhaps my meaning was misjudged because I wasn't clear enough, or I wasn't adding enough weight to what I was saying, which is you can just tolerate the existence of these people, and that's all we need to do for each other is tolerate the existence of each other. I don't want to eliminate people who believe that abortion is okay. I do want to eliminate abortion. I would love that. Whole other episode. In fact, I did 3 on it. Maybe I'll loop back around. Sometimes I think about going back because now I'm almost 2 years into this thing. I wonder if some of my arguments have matured or I found better ways to make those arguments, or if even some of my thoughts have changed in that time. And I don't go back and listen to the early ones as much. And I don't know. I don't know if anybody would even be interested in a rehash of the things I have said in past episodes, but yeah, sometimes I think, I'd love to revisit. I think I have more to say on these issues, or I would have consolidated some parts. But anyways, thanks, Casey, for chiming in and thinking this out.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
Finally, from Andy. Andy sent me this.
Data. 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 Data.
It's a YouTube GIF on how to pronounce data. Thank you, Andy. I think of all of the response letters that I've gotten in the last couple of months, this may be the most important. And I just want to thank you for listening to me, for hearing my cry for help, and for, lending me a hand. I can't tell you how valuable this is. Data, everybody. It's data. Okay. Let's see what we got going on here now. What do I want to share with you guys? Oh, I know. I did want to just take a sober moment here to discuss the way I've been talking about critical race theory, because everybody in the audience for the most part has been pretty supportive, but I want to talk to people who maybe have been supportive of critical race theory and supportive of this podcast and feel maybe that that feels too partisan to you, for me to take on critical race theory the way I do, because I don't know that I've spent enough time explaining. I did an hour and a half episode on it recently, and then Daryl and I broke it down, which I hope will bring more clarity. But since the episode dropped, there's just been a spate of stories that we're covering at my day job about parents pushing back in the school systems on critical race theory, and in fact some states taking measures to just ban it outright. Oklahoma just banned it, and I think Georgia is on the list to ban it in public schools. And I just want you to know that I think there are a lot of people out there who embrace critical race theory because they think that it's good. They're not monsters. I think a lot of people who embrace it, even your school board, even the people on your school board, a lot of the people on your school board, I would venture to say, have never really read the materials. This may come as a shock to you, but almost all of your politicians read about 0% of the bills and things that they put forth. Their interns do that, and people in local leadership, they're in local leadership, they have lives like you do. Right? They don't live in D.C. and have an apartment and can spend months away from their families doing their jobs. They go home and take their kids to practice and, go to book club and do their volunteer work just like everybody else. So a lot of them don't have time or feel they don't have time to read. They don't read. A lot of them feel like, no, we're trying to give racial education here. We're trying to educate people about the challenges that minorities face in this country and all of that stuff. There are a lot of people out there who think that just because it's called critical race theory, that it is good. And I would implore you to actually read critical race theory if that's you, and know that because I do love to argue things from both sides on this show, and I do love to be open to points of view about different subjects that you or I would never have considered. But of all the issues that have come across my plate as a political pundit over the years, to me, I think critical race theory is one of the most important. I feel very strongly about abortion because to me, that's a life or death struggle, but I've never was called to work in that field, in that area. I don't talk a lot about it. I have my beliefs and I'll share them and I'll write about what's going on in the abortion industry from time to time. But I'm a support figure in that movement, right? There are many, many women that I know personally who do the work of angels in that area, and I support them. So I would look at that as like a very serious issue, but it's one that's been raging for a long, long time in this country. But this critical race theory, at least this iteration of what it ultimately is really new. And because it is coming on the heels of this tumultuous year and summer and election season and now presidency that we're having, it is starting to get a bigger foothold quicker than a curriculum normally would in the public school system. And I think critical race theory is a scourge. I don't see any other way to defend this. I have read everything that I can read about it. I have studied it. I have discussed it ad nauseum. And I have come to the conclusion that there's no hay to make out of this. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing you can pick. You can't pick any threads out of it and then, discard the carcass and be like, oh, well, this is a good part of it, though. When we were having the argument about the Confederate statues, say, okay, I'm not in favor of tearing down anything, really. But in the interest of compromise and in the interest of seeing both sides of the situation and how could we come together to realize that, yeah, this does represent only a little bit of a nasty history, why don't we build up next to it? And a solution would be to not tear down anything, but to build up other statues and other monuments to other people who were engaged and influential in that time in history, people who may have been from the African American community or the Native American community or, whatever, may have been Chinese immigrants who came to work on our railroad here back in the day. Let's build it up. It was easy for me, not easy, but it was a pleasant thought exercise to imagine how we could build on the idea that our history isn't necessarily being taught completely. Fine, great. That's a both sides. That's a primo both sides issue. Something that we could take and all come to some kind of agreement that I felt would be satisfactory. Critical race theory has no such threads to pull on. Once you pull one, the whole thing falls apart. It is, for lack of a better term, it is evil. It really is. It is not what you think it is. It is not what people think it is. It is not about equality. It is not about lifting Black people up or solving racism in any respect. It is dangerous. It is dangerous for you, my liberal listeners, and it is dangerous for me, conservatives like me. It is dangerous for your kids, and I don't know how anybody can support. I don't know how anybody can support a lesson in the classroom that would teach your child that they are unworthy of respect simply for how they look, that they are to blame for thousands of years of history that didn't start with this country, but but in a land far, far away, in a galaxy far, far away, that they are responsible for that. They don't even know how to be respected. At the age we're trying to insert this into the classroom, they don't even know how to be responsible enough to change their underwear every day. So to ask children to bear the responsibility, to bear the burden and the cross of ugly history and the history of conquering and defeat and victory and all of that, it's just very unfair to ask a child to carry that burden. You can educate the child about what the history says, right? But that's not what CRT is. That's not what it is. That's not what it does. CRT is a theory that requires action, right? It's not a lesson plan. It comes to your school as a lesson plan, but it's not a lesson plan. It is a blame game. It requires that some students in your school be blamed and be asked to accept the blame. So education, all for it. But blaming students, no. And as I have said before, and will say again, and will always say again, I would never, ever, ever accept somebody telling my son that he is guilty or unworthy of the privilege that he's worked for, or unworthy of the of the good things in his life or the good comforts that he has, or unworthy of being taken seriously and having his thoughts and feelings and opinions taken seriously because he's black. I would not be okay with that. We're going to fight if you're going to come to me with that. I would not respect any white person who wouldn't do the same for their kid, for their white kid. I have no respect for any white person who actually sits back and says that's okay for my kid. That's vile. It's weak. You know, you look weak to me. This is another thing I always tell you guys, that this whole like apology tour that white folks are supposed to be doing these days. Like, I know that there's some black people out there who are on the other side of the ideological fence for me who get a kick out of it. Like, it's like torture porn to them. Like, they like it. They want to see white folks groveling and apologizing. I get it. And there's a bit of schadenfreude in it for some people. I get that. But for the most part, we're laughing at you. Like the stories that my husband and I share with each other, or that I share with my black friends about what we call, quote, guilty white folks who like to start conversations with apologies. And those people are out there. I can't believe it. Like, more and more you see these people every day. And I told you about my liberal friend's professor friend who, upon meeting me, immediately assaulted me with how much he hates white people. This is a white guy, right? And how he was in an airport in Nigeria recently and just felt so relieved that he was the only white person there. That was like, I hadn't even said hello to him. And I mean that. So those people are out there. They're not just caricatures. They're real people. And I'm laughing about him, right? I'm telling you this story and I'm laughing about him. And when my liberal friend and I, black friend and I left, we both laughed about him. We laugh at you because it's weakness. And I find weakness very distasteful, definitely to a fault. I'm sure if I took this to my therapist, we could work out why weak people give me the heebie-jeebies, right? I'm the type of person, I don't like indecisive. Make a decision, even if it's the wrong one, make a decision. I don't like it. And so it's just so distasteful. And so I would find any white mother who wouldn't stand up for her child against the public school system, telling her child that he's guilty just by the way he looks and that he needs to enter his classroom every day as an oppressor. I have zero respect for that. I expect you people to be standing up for your kids the way I stand up for my kids. If you're in a school system that is teaching your child that their race makes them wrong, you stand up for your child. And F the haters. So if I seem to be talking very decisively and very disparagingly about critical race theory, just know that I have nothing good to say about it, and I will not have anything good to say about it. To me, this is the fight of our lifetimes right now. Right now. And it ties into a lot of other issues that we have when it comes to, quote, social justice. So it's actually a really great battlefield to just dig in on. And I'm happy to see so many people across the country really digging in and getting to their school board meetings and letting folks know, like in Loudoun County, this story's going viral today. I'll probably be covering it as well soon, but other people are doing it now and doing it better than I do it. But in Loudoun County, there's a parents group that's getting ready to recall 6 of 10 school board members because of critical race theory and COVID restrictions. And they found out that the school board had a private Facebook room in which they were trying to dox parents who were opposing the critical race theory curriculum so that they could, intimidate them. And if you don't know what dox means, it just means like investigate them, get their names and addresses and find out where they live. So that Facebook group got outed. And so now there's an effort to just remove them from their posts altogether. And it's happening in several areas across the United States. And I suggest that maybe if y'all have been having problems with your school board recently, particularly in the last year, don't think you can't do anything about it. I think there's a lot of buyer's remorse going on out there in a lot of places. And so if that's you, don't be afraid to organize a little group. There's strength in numbers and get in this game. And yet go ahead and recall those school board members. Go ahead and do it. We've just taken for granted that the leaders we elect will do the jobs we've elected them to do without question, without corruption.
Politics are becoming more and more divisive every day. My name is Colin Jackson. I'm the co-host of Not Another Political Podcast, where we reject popular opinions and prioritize solutions over partisan dogma. Download Not Another Political Podcast on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast entertainment today.
America should not work. You've got to be able to trust the election process. But right now, Americans, it is very obvious that you cannot trust your election process. Not talking about fake elections or election fraud, but talking about the way that your candidates represent themselves and the information they're willing to give you about what they intend to do when they reach office. Those things we let them lie to us about those things. We let them obscure those things, or we let them get away with not explaining themselves at all. So right now, that's why I say right now, people can't trust their voting process because they realize that they don't get the whole story from the candidates on the trail. So there's a lot of buyer's remorse out there, a lot of recalls happening, and I'm in favor of it for a season. And I live in the land of California where we basically have a straight democracy here. This is what democracy looks like, is California. And it's a disaster. There's a reason why our founding fathers did not go with democracy. So the only way for the people to speak up here a lot of times is a recall. Well, I'd like it to be different, but some people won't let me run for governor. I won't mention any names, Mr. Davis. So all that to say, a roundabout way to say that I plan to be using my platform and my bully pulpit to talk a lot about CRT and how dangerous it is and why we should resist it at every corner, in every way. And I'm very sorry if that offends you or drives you away, but I won't pretend that something so horrible and anti-American and anti-Black, I won't pretend that something like that has redeeming qualities just for the sake of it. I won't. If you guys would like to chime in, if you have complaints or whatever, write me, JLTY@protonmail.com, JLTY@protonmail.com, and send me your song submissions if you have any. We've got a couple weeks left in the contest, so we've had some. And I've got a song, let's see, who do I have coming up today? Up next is an entry from Abigail. She actually named this song Count Dracula. Thanks, Abigail. I really do appreciate it. We're going to play this song on the way out, but don't forget to join me over at davisnation.locals.com to find more discussion, bonus episodes. You can find the full episode with Daryl Harrison over there, full video. We've got book club going on over there. What else going on? Whatever. Just go check it out. You'll like it. You won't be disappointed. If you don't like it, don't renew for next month. No hard feelings. And, fabulous news. Live show coming up in Cleveland in July. That's right. We are locking down the venue now. The date I'm thinking is going to be right around my birthday, which would be the weekend of July, like 22nd, 23rd, 24th, that area. My birthday's on the 23rd. Everybody mark that down. And so I'd like to be there for my birthday, and it should be right around the time when I launch my 100th episode as well. So there'll be lots to celebrate. I can't wait to do this live meetup. And as soon as I get the details of the location, we can get tickets set up so you guys can start making your plans now, because I know that you need to plan ahead. Travel's a little wonky. We don't know what COVID high strain Justin's going to be like to get on an airplane or whatever moving forward. So you want to make your plans. I get that. And I mean, we've got gas shortages now. Hopefully that'll be cleared up in the next few weeks here, and you won't even have to worry about that. But in the meantime, it might take you a little extra effort to get to Cleveland. So we want to give you as much time as possible to plan. And we're really excited. We're going to have some other network personalities there for you to meet and talk to as well. And we're going to have some stimulating conversation and some beers probably. And it's going to be great. Going to be fun. So I'm really looking forward to getting out on the road and actually meeting people face to face this summer. So excited for it. Okay, guys, that is the show. Don't miss Daryl B. Harrison on this week's mini episode. And thank you to Abigail for this entry in the theme song contest. And I will catch you next time here on Just Listen to Yourself.
The FCB Radio Network. First class broadcasting worldwide.